Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason. How's it going?
Good. Are you enjoying this warm weather? House a little warm right now?
Yeah, it's cooking in here. I don't have the best insulation in my 1979 built house. So, I think it's up to about 28. But hopefully with the sun dropping now, things will cool down a bit. We can all get a good night's sleep. How about you?
It's okay in here. I think for whatever reasons, the basement still stays cool. So the pod cave is nice and cool. I have no great complaints at this point in time, but beautiful weather out there means that over the next few days, hopefully it continues on so we can watch some games in person in this good weather.
Yeah, which we actually have done this week, and we're going to talk about that later in the episode. But no, the weather gods really smiled on the Calgary Stampede this year. There has been a little bit of rain and thunder and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, can't ask for much more than mid to high 20s for the greatest outdoor show on earth. And that pairs nicely with the focus of our podcast, which is, of course, soccer in Calgary.
Yeah, we focus on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We talk about the teams and players in the city soccer community from grassroots to the amateurs all the way up to the pros. We've got a lot of things to talk about this week, Scott. Why don't you run through everything we want to talk about?
Yeah, it's a packed agenda. We're, of course, going to review Cavalry FC's match against Vancouver Whitecaps the other night. This was the second round of the Canadian Championship. We're also going to preview the second leg of that series, which is happening at Spruce Meadows on Monday. In terms of the Wild, the Calgary Wild, they have an upcoming game this Saturday, and they also, shortly after our last episode went live, announced a new head coach for the team. So that's really exciting. And then we will also recap the Alberta Premier League action from Tuesday night, which we went to, Jason. First time we've been to a game together in a while, it seems, but we were at Broadview.
Yeah, we had a chance to go see Foothills Blizzard for a bit. Beautiful night. We were kind of thinking it was going to be a big heavyweight matchup, but wasn't really that close. But anyway, it was a fun evening out. We'll talk more about that in the APL segment.
And then we also have an interview this week. Earlier today, actually, you and I spoke to Leah Parsons, goalkeeper from Calgary, who's currently plying her trade in the Alberta Premier League with Foothills, but will be heading back to the U.S. to resume her NCAA career very shortly with the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Let's get on with it. Let's start talking about the Canadian Championship and Cavalry FC's series against the Vancouver Whitecaps.
This is Dan Clum, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So we predicted that Cavalry would get a result in the first leg of this Voyageur Cup tie. We figured that Whitecaps had been out of action for the better part of 9 weeks or something like that. Due to the World Cup, there hasn't been any MLS games for quite a while. And due to the World Cup, Whitecaps were going to be missing some of their key players, including Sebastian Berhalter, who was with the U.S., and Andres Cubas, who was playing for Paraguay. And Thomas Müller, their World Cup winning talisman, was kind of a question mark considering that he'd been doing TV punditry during the World Cup. But Jason, even though two of those players didn't play, our prediction couldn't have been more wrong because the Whitecaps gave Cavalry a little bit of a hiding in this one.
Yeah, the final result was 4-1. In the first half, there seemed to be, some hope, but when they turned it on in the second half, it was pretty clear who was the better team.
Yeah, clearly. And Thomas Müller was brought on at halftime with the score tied at 1-1. And he actually scored the winning goal not long after. But yeah, let's talk about some of these goals. Obviously, Cavalry got off to the worst of possible starts. Adam Perlman, he's been fantastic in recent weeks at right back, but had a bit of a blooper reel moment in just the second minute of the game, conceding an own goal to put Vancouver up 1-0 very early on.
So, Scott, I felt that on that goal, that was a really uncharacteristic for Cavalry goal. Like, they just seemed like wildly unprepared, and kind of disorganized and at the beginning of a game. And was that just me? It seemed like they were not quite organized. And then, Perlman's played so great, but that kind of just fell into the whole thing. It just got the wrong foot on it and just seemed like kind of a nightmare moment for them.
Yeah, and I agree. It was like They just hadn't settled into the game yet. And this was it a corner kick, I think, that got bobbled around the box a bit, and no one was able to clear it properly. And then Perlman picked the corner somehow. It just felt like maybe there was some early game jitters from the back line on that play, and they snapped out of it immediately and actually had a pretty decent first half, going toe-to-toe with Vancouver. Obviously, as would be expected, Vancouver spent most of the first half with the ball, and most of the first half was played in Cavalry's half. But Cavalry did great to equalize right before the half, thanks to Dan Klomp. And it actually was Adam Perlman kind of making amends on this goal because he provided the long throw that led to this strike from Klomp.
Yeah, another Dan Klomp goal with his feet.
Yeah, I think that's 3 or 4 now this year. He's usually scoring them with his head, but this time kind of smashed it into the roof of the net from close range over Bomer. But after that, despite the momentum shift, you'd think that could give Cavalry. Vancouver rolled their subs at halftime, and it was just one-sided from there on out. Thomas Müller, as mentioned, scored in the 61st minute, putting home a very characteristic Thomas Müller goal. Jason, I've watched him play probably 200 games over the course of his career, and he's developed a reputation as what they call in Germany a Raumdeuter, someone who just finds space in the box, and he did it again. So had a pretty easy finish, but was just in the right place at the right time, as he so often is.
Yeah, and then a few minutes later, it was 3-1 all of a sudden, and it just really started to feel kind of out of reach at that point.
Yeah, and I think you could see their shoulders slump a little bit. And then in the 75th minute, Vancouver kind of put the exclamation mark on the game and most likely the series, unfortunately. They basically made it 4-1 with 15 minutes to go. And from here on out, Jason, I don't know how we see Cavalry getting back into this, because this is one of the best teams in MLS at the moment, one of the best teams in North America. And despite the home field advantage coming up, there's a tall order for Cavalry to beat the Whitecaps by 3.
There was no rust on the Whitecaps at all. They looked, if anything, the opposite. In the post-match press conference, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. said it was like they were hungry to play.
Yeah, as mentioned, they hadn't played in 50 days. And I think considering that they started some guys who maybe don't usually start, they probably were itching to play and saw this as an opportunity to stake their claim for a starting spot. Mikhail Gerasimenkov, great example, right? He played against his former club from the start. And then we saw guys like Ryan Gault play, who haven't played in a while, I believe. So, a Whitecaps team that didn't look rusty at all. They looked like they were firing on all cylinders.
So the return leg is going to be on Monday evening, 7:30 at Spruce Meadows. It seems like it's most likely to be a bit anticlimactic, but should still be interesting. From what I understand, it's basically a sellout. There are really no seats left to speak of. When I checked Ticketmaster yesterday, there was like a few like single tickets here and there, but that was pretty much it. But I think it's somewhat unlikely that the Whitecaps' biggest stars are going to make the trip to Calgary.
Yeah, I think Cavalry really leaned into the Müller mania angle of this series and the fact that a World Cup winner was going to be potentially coming to Spruce Meadows. And it seems very, very unlikely that Müller will actually travel with the Whitecaps. He, despite being a substitute, came on, kind of limped off the pitch shortly afterward with thigh strain. Very unlikely that he'll actually play in this game. Another reason to think that is after this match, Whitecaps have a pretty big game against Chicago Fire, Robert Lewandowski's new team. So even if Müller is back to his fit self in the next few days, I feel like Whitecaps, Jesper Sorensen would probably prefer to have him available for that game against his former Bayern Munich teammate.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. But be that as it may, it's always interesting when the Whitecaps or any MLS team comes to town. So still looking forward to it on Monday evening. But I think expectations going into this one are relatively low.
Yeah, as mentioned, I think the series is kind of a foregone conclusion that Whitecaps are going to advance. But Cavalry, I'm sure they're going to want to give a good performance in front of a sellout crowd of hopefully 6,000 plus fans. And they tend to play Whitecaps really well when they play at home, right? I think back to 2019, they drew them 0-0. And then in 2022, they technically tied after 90 minutes and then just went out in the shootout. So, yeah, pretty good performances in the past from Cavalry, and I'm sure they're going to be hoping for another one.
Hi, this is Christine Sinclair, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, let's talk about the Calgary Wild, and they are playing a match this weekend, but I think we want to start this segment by talking about their new head coach. Early this week, they announced that Leah Blayney is the second head coach in the club's history.
Yeah, we got this news, I think it was the day that our last episode came out, Jason, so kind of fortunate timing that it came out so soon after we recorded. But big news for a club that is really struggling this year and hasn't seen a win yet. So yeah, what do we know about Leah Blayney? So I believe she actually arrived yesterday, July 8th, according to the club's news release. She's 40 and has 2 decades of experience as either a player and a coach. She is, I believe, Australian. Yeah, because she played for the Matildas. A lot of her coaching has been in Japan.
Well, actually, a lot of her coaching has been for Australia's youth teams. She spent 5 years as the U20 women's head coach, but her most recent gig was assistant coach with the Japanese women's national team. So that's what she has kind of done over the past year. She was the assistant coach, and Japan got some pretty good results under this coaching staff that they had, but the head coach was relieved of his duties, and then a week or two later, they announced that she was leaving the club as well. Her contract was running out, and they weren't going to keep her. So this all kind of happened, I think, just in the spring here, like I think in May or June, which, you know, resulted in her being available. So that was her last job, was doing the Japanese women's team. And like I said, she had some success on the field, but it didn't translate into the Japanese Federation wanting to keep her around.
Yeah, that success being the 2026 AFC Women's Asian Cup Championship, as well as the 2025 She Believes Cup Championship. And Japan has qualified for next year's Women's World Cup. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a great get for the Calgary Wild, Jason. However, you remarked that her resume is pretty similar to Calgary's inaugural head coach.
Yeah, like I see a lot of similarities between her and Lydia Bedford. You know, like both of them are kind of known as being coaches that are really good with youth players, and both of them spent most of their career working for national teams and not for club teams. Now, Lydia Bedford actually, you know, she did coach in England for some clubs, but Leah Blayney, her experience in club football is extremely limited. I believe she spent a year and a half around 2016, 2017, where she was the assistant coach for I think it's the Western Sydney Wanderers in the Australian A-League. And that pretty much is her coaching experience at a club level. So, you know, her resume looks pretty good from a soccer perspective for sure. But yeah, she doesn't really have that experience in club football.
No, she did play professionally, and we can mention she played for Boston in the NWSL, well as for clubs in Sweden, or a club in Sweden. And she was capped by Australia's women's national team between 2003 and 2009. She earned 16 caps while also playing at the U20 World Cup in 2006 and the U19 World Cup in 2004.
Yeah, she had a pretty good career as a player. I believe I read somewhere that she did have quite a significant injury that ended her career maybe earlier than, you know, it wasn't like she played for years and years and retired. She kind of, her career was cut short by injury. Do you have any thoughts, Scott, about, you know, I kind of mentioned that she definitely seems to have the tactical chops, but, you know, I've got a couple concerns about, you know, lack of experience managing a club. But what are your thoughts about it?
I think it's good news. I think the Wild really need a change in direction. Things haven't gone really well with Sinead McSherry at the helm. You know, the results speak for themselves. The table speaks for itself. And often, as we see when a new head coach joins, there's a little bit of a bounce, right? Like the team picks its performances up and gets a few good results. It's just a phenomenon in sport. So I think this is a good addition at an important time, because if they waited a little bit longer, Jason, the season may have already been a loss, right? Like if they were already to a point where they're not going to make the playoffs, which we may be at that point, right? There's still a big gap between Calgary and the team above them in the standings and a playoff position. But yeah, I'm glad they've found a new coach to replace Lydia Bedford permanently, because things haven't been going very well, as we've been talking about for the last few months.
Yeah, I'm really glad they made a decision, and they're giving they're giving it a go, and they're going to see how it goes. We're very close to the point where the season, like making the playoffs, it's dicey right now. If everything goes really well and other teams don't perform, I feel like there could still be a chance. It's an uphill battle, I think, but we'll see how it goes. She's going to be around for this first match, I guess. My one overarching concern, though, is still about the recruitment. Where are the players going to come from? That was a real problem in the Lydia Bedford era. This team has roster requirements that mean that it has to be mostly Canadian players. And I don't see any evidence that Leah Blayney knows anything about the Canadian player pool, which is totally fine. But there needs to be a plan so that they can track down and bring in Canadian players and bring in players that can make this team better. Because I think one thing we've established is that this team needs more talent. They need to improve the talent on the roster. So she could be a tactical genius, but if she doesn't have the players, I don't know. Being a tactical genius might not be enough if you don't have the pieces to use.
Right. And the transfer window is opening very soon, right? I think 2 weeks from now, if not less. So
yeah, I think it's next week sometimes, 17th or something.
So early test for sure that we'll see if she is able to bring in some players, because you're absolutely right. The roster the Wild have right now just seems to fall short every game.
Well, when it comes down to recruiting, who have the Wild really brought into the fold? Like on their U23 team, they've had, local players, and they brought Izzy Monk in, who maybe is going to sign for the team. And in this past U23 game, they did bring in a new player. They brought in a new non-Calgary player. They brought in Sarita Thurton's younger sister. So which just leads me to think that they don't really have any mechanism to recruit, because, the only player they've brought in this season since the start of preseason from outside of Calgary is the sister of one of their existing players.
So, Jason, we'll see how Leah Blayney does. She'll have a very early test with her new team. They're hosting a home game this weekend. Finally, they're going to play against the Vancouver Rise at McMahon Stadium on Saturday. Kickoff is at 5 p.m. and this is the Wild's Wild West themed match, which is fitting considering we are in the midst of the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see them play Vancouver. It seems like it's kind of as close as they have to a local rival, I guess. So, and as we mentioned, Vancouver is the team they're closest to in the standings. They're in 5th place, so the closest team to the Wild. They have 10 points on 10 games. Meanwhile, the Wild have 2 points on 9 games. So, how do you climb your way up the table? I guess, one match at a time. So this would be as good a place to start as any.
Yeah, I mean, they could cut that down to 5 points with a game in hand. But, looking at the table right now, Jason, what sticks out to me is the Rise have the league's worst defensive record, surprisingly. I think it would be the Wild, but actually the Rise have conceded 3 goals more than Calgary. They're conceding almost 3 goals a game. So you have to look at that from a Calgary perspective and say, let's attack. We have to go for it. That's something the Wild has really struggled at. They only have 6 goals, by far the worst in the league. Vancouver has 13, so more than twice as many. But looking at the nature of Vancouver Rise's defense and goalkeeping this year, you have to think, okay, let's get shots on target throughout this game and see where it gets us.
Hi, it's Leah Parsons, and you're listening to YYC Soccer Podcast.
So now would be a good time for us to run our interview with Leah Parsons. As mentioned, she is playing down in Alabama at the University of Alabama Birmingham. She's also been playing for Foothills in League One Alberta. Very interesting summer job, working with Cavalry.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this at the top of the episode, but Leah Parsons is working as an intern for Cavalry in the communications department. So someone we've actually ran into at games and have been in touch with via email quite a few times this summer. So yeah, let's run that interview now, and our listeners can hear from Leah about a very busy summer that she's having. I'd like to welcome Leah Parsons to the podcast. Leah is originally from Calgary, but is currently playing for the University of Alabama Birmingham Blazers as a goalkeeper, I believe returning there this fall, and has also played for the University of Oregon Ducks and was previously with the Whitecaps Academy. Leah, thanks for coming on our podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, I think I mentioned what teams you have most recently played for and are currently playing for, but could you maybe share with our listeners a bit of your background and which clubs you played with in Calgary before you went over to Vancouver?
Yeah, so from Calgary, grew up playing here, played for MSB for a little bit, and then I was at Blizzards until I went to the Whitecaps residency program when I was 15 years old. So I did 3 years there living with homestay families and being a part of that program. And then through there, I committed to the University of Oregon, so had 2 seasons out there, and then just recently transferred to the University of Alabama at Birmingham. So I just finished 1 year there. I'm heading into my 4th year.
Can you talk about what it was like to move away from home at 15 and to stay with billet families out in Vancouver?
It was a really good experience. I have some of my fondest memories of soccer at Whitecaps, just how they did things, and the group of players that I was with was really special. It was a lot for both me and my family, just because you're young at 15, you're going into this place you never know, and a lot of the time you don't really meet the families until you head out there. But I was fortunate to have 3 really good families that I was able to live with, and they opened their homes to me. But it was really great. They did a really good job at prepping us for university. Once I was there and was able to learn how to kind of fend for myself a bit, that transition to university was really easy for me. And I found that, especially my first year, when I saw a lot of my teammates missed home and they were kind of just still wanting to be at home and not used to that kind of matureness, I felt like I was there just because I had that pre-university experience.
Getting back to your university career here, so you started off in Oregon for a couple of years, and then you went to Alabama Birmingham. So you utilized the transfer portal. So I'm curious about the whole transfer portal concept. It's a relatively new thing. So what was that whole experience like trying to navigate how it all works and just making those kinds of decisions? Like, how does that, just talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was definitely a stressful experience for both me and my family. It was a lot. I think that I kind of looked at it 2 ways. On the one side, it was quite nerve-wracking, especially leaving a place that I love so much. I mean, Oregon will always have a special place in my heart, and just especially the state, it's beautiful, loved it there. So that was kind of sad to leave, but I was also really excited for another chance to live somewhere else. Especially as a Canadian, like, who can say that they lived in more than one state in America? So that it was quite stressful, but I knew what I wanted in terms of my university experience. So when I went into the portal, I had a list of things that I knew I wanted. And so through that, I kind of used that as a way of nitpicking which schools I really wanted to talk to and which ones were going to be the right fit. And through that, Alabama, Birmingham had the right fit for me in terms of what I was looking for in the next 2 years.
And is University of Oregon in Portland or Eugene? Where exactly is it?
It's in Eugene, Oregon, so it's about 2.5 hours away from Portland. So Eugene, Oregon is a very small town. It's a university town, and the Ducks is really centered around it. The whole community, or if you're in Eugene, you're going to be a Ducks fan for sure.
Okay, and can you talk about maybe the difference culturally between living in and playing in a place like Oregon and then a city like Birmingham, Alabama? Like, culturally, I'm sure it's very different. How about on the pitch as well?
Yeah, it's very different. You're going from being on the West Coast, being in Oregon versus going in the deep South in Alabama. So I had a lot of culture changes. And then in terms of just environment as well, as I said, Eugene is a small town. So it's very centered around the university, which is really, really cool. They have a really big football program, and my first year they're in the Pac-12, and then they moved into the Big Ten. So both are very big sports-centered conferences. So transferring to UAB, it was just a different experience in terms of, one, it's the South, so it's hot, it's humid. You're in a town where UAB is mainly a medical school, so you're surrounded a lot of hospitals, and it's just kind of a different energy on campus. Both are very nice, but it's very different. And then in terms of sports style, it's just a little bit different because you're going to the American Conference. So different teams, different maybe outlook in terms of what sports look like. You're in Birmingham where it's not so much of a small town and there's a lot else going there versus Eugene sports kind of runs that town.
Right now, over the summer, you're playing for Foothills in the Alberta Premier League. How's that been going? What's that been like for the summer? I think you played a little bit last year for Foothills as well, but how's it been going so far?
Yeah, it's been great. I had my last game on Tuesday, which was honestly sad. I really do treasure the opportunities where I get to come home and play in Calgary because I get to play in front of my friends and family. So it was really great. And getting to come home, it's such an awesome experience because you get to go home and you get to play with all these players that you grew up playing with. You get to play against them as well. And you get to also be around all these girls that have had different experiences. Some are playing U Sports, some have already played pro and they're home for the summer, or some are just going. So you get to kind of learn from all these girls and hear their experiences, and especially getting to play with younger players. It's been fun to kind of chat with them and talk about my experience and kind of give them advice when I can. So it's been really great. And Foothills is a great organization and playing for Tux is always a treat. So it's been really fun.
How do you feel the APL compares with other levels you played at, including both NCAA teams?
I'd say it's good. I'd say especially when what matters in the summer is getting games. So getting the opportunity to play at least 1 or 2 games a week is really important for us. When you go home for the summer, all you want to do is just get those minutes in so you prep for your season. So I feel very prepared to go back into preseason because I've been able to get minutes. I've been able to train. So I'd say in that part, it's good. And then also just from a level standpoint, you're playing with girls that are all in university or either going into it or they've already played. So I'd say the level is very similar and you're definitely being pushed.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about this upcoming NCAA season in the fall. I know from a previous conversation we had, you mentioned you're going into your 4th year, but you mentioned something about a 5th year possibility as well. So this might not be the end of your university career.
Yeah. So, and I think recently, after you and I talked, the NCAA just passed a rule. So it's 5 and 5 years. So it's the same that U Sports has now. Originally, either way, I had a 5th year because I redshirted my 2nd year at Oregon. But now they have a blanket rule that right when you start school, you have 5 years. So there's no redshirt years, there's no medical years at all. So I do have a 5th year. Every senior does now. I think that especially as a goalkeeper, what matters for me is getting games. So I do plan on taking it just because why wouldn't I get more experience and also get another degree while I'm at it? I think it's definitely going to change what NCAA sports look like in terms of recruiting and also what players do in terms of schooling and all that. But I think it's a good situation in the long run.
This whole change of the schedule, like to playing in the fall and the spring, that's just men's, right? That's not women's. Is that correct?
Correct. So it's just the men's. So right now for the women's, we have a fall season that actually, I'd say, matters. And then the spring, it's just exhibition games and training.
What areas of your game are you hoping to improve this season, heading into your 4th year now?
I guess the biggest thing is especially because I'm a senior and I'm older, it's just being commanding more of the pitch. I think that I have a unique opportunity to help the younger players coming in, kind of educate them on, how we do things and how we play. So that's something I really want to hope to help, especially having experience in the Pac-12, Big Ten. There's certain things I think I can help out with that. And then, of course, just in my game, just being dominant in the air, distributions, everything that I want to continue to work on that I think I've gotten better at, especially over the summer, and I've been able to really focus on. But those are the areas that I really want to showcase, I guess, this upcoming season.
As far as goals for yourself and the team for this season, do you have specific goals that you've laid out and kind of have in mind?
Goals-wise, we want to finish top of the table in the American Conference. We had a really good past season. We finished number 3, which was good. And we'd really like to win the tournament, our conference tournament. We have an older squad. We didn't have many girls graduate. So I think that that's the main focus. It's just showing what we know we can do out on the pitch. And so I think that we have an exciting season coming up. We have a lot of away games, which is new to us. The past season, I think we only had maybe 4 or 5 away games, and now we have a lot more. So it's just being able to use that to our advantage in any way we can and just show what we can do.
Leah, I think we're going to segue and talk a little bit about your off the pitch because we know, of course, you're interning at Cavalry this summer. So can you talk a little bit about your position with the club and how you ended up doing what you're doing there?
At UAB, I am majoring in public relations and communications. So for that degree, you need to do an internship. And when I was looking into it, I knew that I wanted to do something in sports. I find that because that's one of my biggest passions, I feel like every time I talk about sports, it doesn't feel like work. So I knew that for my internship, I really wanted to focus in on that. And the opportunity with Calgary came up. And so I took it. And so this summer's been quite busy with watching the World Cup, playing soccer, and also being a part of Calvary, but I can't complain too much about that. And so at Calvary, I get to help with all the media side of things and as well as the communication side of things. So coordinating media with game days and practices and also the social media side. Hannah's been a really good supervisor to me and mentor, and she's really taught me a lot. So it's been a really awesome experience.
I think we're getting near the end here, but I want to sort of touch a little bit on your goals and aspirations, even sort of beyond university. Like, as far as like a post-university career, like, do you have aspirations to, look at some pro options? Do you pay attention to the NSL? Like, what are your thoughts about life after NCAA?
I do have aspirations to play after, especially once I got into the Whitecaps program. That kind of passion for me solidified that I wanted to play after. And so that's already kind of set for me. In terms of where, I kind of open anywhere. I think it's so exciting that the NSL is happening. I've been trying to watch as many games as I can, and I think it's very exciting that each season you have different teams rising to the top. There's a lot of games where you don't know which way it's going to go, and I think it's really exciting how competitive it is so far. So for me, I'd love to play in Canada, but I would also love the opportunity to travel. So wherever that opportunity comes, I will definitely take it, but I definitely want to play after.
So have you talked to Kendall and Mila and Emma, like, your teammates on Foothills that have all been in Europe this past year?
I have, yeah. And, for me, I think the biggest thing is asking everyone, how was it? What do you have to say about it? Just for me to kind of learn. And they all said how much they enjoyed playing overseas. They said it's so exciting getting the chance to be somewhere else and live there and learn the culture and learn the team. So they all really enjoyed it. And I can definitely see myself doing something similar. I just need to find what best opportunity is for me.
I understand your mom was born in South Africa, correct?
She was, yeah.
And we've seen lately, especially Calgarians playing for other national teams where one or both of their parents were from, actually with like the Schneider, for instance, playing with the Trinidad and Tobago program. Have you ever considered reaching out to the South African Football Association to inquire about that?
Although my mom is born in South Africa, she doesn't have her actual birth certificate for there, so she doesn't have a passport. So that was never really anything that we've considered too much, just because she doesn't have that. But that definitely wouldn't be something I would ever say no to, but that hasn't been anything we've kind of pushed for.
Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you want to mention? Any shout outs before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. Just thank you guys for your time and letting me hop on here.
Hi, this is Ben Peppel, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Let's talk about the Alberta Premier League, and let's review some results from Tuesday. I guess probably a good place to start, Scott, would be the game that we attended.
Yeah, this was Tuesday night, beautiful evening, probably 20 Celsius. And you and I watched the bulk of this game from up top of the clubhouse at Broadview. Great place to watch from and have a beer. A very unexpected result, Jason. This was a game that we had circled on our calendars. We figured that Blizzard would be the favorites, coming in. They had such a strong start to the season, going 8-0 in their first 8 matches, but they're in a little bit of a slump at the moment because this game ended in a 3-0 win for Foothills.
Yeah, like Foothills really dominated this game. They really played well. The score was 3-0, but based on what I saw, very deserved. I didn't feel there was a lot of positives for Blizzard to take out of this performance. It was a very dominant game for Foothills, I thought.
Yeah, they were much more clinical. I think the opening 15 minutes or so were pretty back and forth, but Foothills capitalized on their very first decent chance of the game when Robert Woodruff Brown roofed a very nice shot past the Blizzard goalkeeper. Second goal, I believe, was Fraser Aird, another penalty kick goal from the former Cavalry right back, who we noticed seemed to be playing as center back for Foothills. And then Emmanuel Dan Adukiani made it 3-0 not too long afterward. And not long after that, Blizzard player Solomon Aria got the deserved red card. And, down a man, it was never likely that Blizzard were going to be able to crawl their way back into this one.
Yeah, it just seemed like a foregone conclusion at that point. And yeah, a huge win for Foothills that, puts Foothills in right back into it and into the whole race for first place in the men's division. So yeah, really tightened everything up.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the table in a minute or two, but why don't we just mention the other game from Tuesday night in the men's division, that being between Cavalry 2 and Callies United. This was the game that took place down at the University of Lethbridge. A good night for Cavalry 2 as they win this one 2-0, thanks to goals from Micah Hyatt and Ethan Darpo.
Yeah, so let's talk about that table. So all the other teams are eliminated from getting first place, but as it stands, 3 teams remaining. They've all played 10 games. They all have 4 matches to go. And currently, BTB's on top with 27. Blizzard has 24. And Foothills has 23.
Yeah, Blizzard surrendering their lead atop the table to BTB. So now with 2 losses in their last 2 games. And they have some tough games coming up, right? And Foothills have to play BTB. The way the schedule worked out this year means that there's a lot of games at the end of the schedule with a lot of meaning in terms of who's going to win this division.
Even though Foothills is the third of those teams, they've got 2 matches where they can play the teams above them and potentially, still have the chance to move up. So it really is any of these 3 teams could come out on top by the end of the year.
Yeah, and it very well could go down to the very last game of the season, which would be exciting.
All right, let's talk about the women's division now. And before the men's match at Broadview, Foothills women played Blizzard women, and Foothills also won this match.
Yeah, 1-0 win, thanks to a goal from Izzy De Palma. And we noticed that the Schneider sisters were playing for Foothills after having played in Portugal for the last several months.
Yeah, Emma and Maya Schneider both got the start for Foothills. Former podcast guests. So I guess they're back for the summer, I guess, right now.
And then there was another matchup over at Maxwell Center in the APL. Calgary Wild U23s were taking on Callies United. Thumped them, Jason. This 9-0 win for Wild U23s.
Yes, ugly game. Wild U23s, 9 goals. Anna Reed Garvey got a hat trick. Michelle Romero from the senior side, she only played the first half, but she scored 2 goals in that 45 minutes. Shaden El Assad got 2 goals, and then Annalise Sakura and Jada Jones each got singles.
Yeah, not unexpected result, but the scoreline definitely raised some eyebrows, Jason. But Callies United have struggled this year, and the Wild are top of the table, and they keep that position. And as we look at the women's division in the APL, there's still 5 teams realistically that could claim first place.
Yeah, well, probably realistically 4. St. Albert is lagging behind. But yeah, right now, as it stands, Wild U23s have 24 points. Blizzard have 20. BTB and Foothills both have 19. And then St. Albert's played 1 less match, but they're at 14 points. So those are the teams that have not been statistically eliminated as yet.
And there's still a lot of head-to-head matches between these teams. Blizzard facing St. Albert next week. BTB playing Foothills the same day, that being July 17th. And then Blizzard versus Foothills, a rematch on July 28th, last game of the regular season.
Let's talk about the matches on Friday. First match to talk about is Blizzard versus Callies. They're going to play at the West Soccer Dome, women at 5:30, men at 8. And then there's also a match in St. Albert, where St. Albert is going to play Rangers, men at 5:30 and women at 7:45. And then we got a special doubleheader in a city that we both have connections to, Scott.
Yeah, this is Cavalry 2 facing BTB, and then Wild U23 facing BTB up in Airdrie at the Ed Egger Athletic Park, Jason, a field that I have spent many afternoons and evenings at back when I was a reporter and then editor for the Airdrie City View. I covered a lot of high school football games there, as well as Alberta Football League games for the Airdrie Irish. But since then, it's been converted into an artificial turf pitch. And I think this will be the highest profile soccer games that have been played on this field since it opened, I believe, last year.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that there is a bit of a push on this from the Airdrie Soccer Association, like promoting the match and that sort of thing. So hopefully they get a nice crowd out there. And that Ed Egerer complex, it's a pretty good facility when it comes right down to it. It's got a nice stand there, and they've got the scoreboard, they've got the field. There's a track surrounding it, but overall, it's a pretty good venue when it comes right down to it.
Yeah, it's awesome, to be honest. And I've been there when they have called Airdrie Bowl, which is a big rivalry game between two of Airdrie's high school football programs. And they get a lot of the student body from both schools out. So you get like 5 or 6 or even 700 kids watching. And, I don't expect that many for this APL doubleheader. But no, great place to watch, great sight lines from the main stand there. And it kind of overlooks East Lake. So a pretty nice place to watch a sporting event, for sure.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the YYC Soccer Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so new episodes are waiting for you as soon as they're released. Visit our website, yycsoccer.com, for our archives. And there are also links there to purchase Scott's book. It's called Here Come the Cavalry, and it's all about the history of professional soccer in Calgary. We love your feedback. You can leave a question in the comments section of our website. You can connect with us on X, Instagram, or Blue Sky. Our username is YYCSoccer403. If you have a moment, leave us a review. It helps other soccer fans discover our show. We'll be back soon with more stories from Calgary soccer community. Until next time, keep supporting local soccer, and we'll see you at the match.